In 1937, February the 20th, I found myself on a New York dock. My destination was Spain. There had been many turns and twists in my life. Mississippi, Chicago, and New York.
Lord, I got on the freight train, try to beat my way. Lord, I'm damn rocks and gravel, flew out in my face. Well, I stand conductor, let me ride it blind. Well, I stand conductor, let me ride it blind.
In Mississippi, where I was born, in 1906, if the family Bible was correct, that was the only way of knowing, because they did not register birth or death of black at that time. My grandmother was 15 years old at the end of slavery, and as she told me the story, she was a house girl, washing dishes, fanning flies from the table as the master and his family ate. Then she tells me about how it was the day that the Yanks was heard coming down the road. Everybody was, at the moment, somewhat frightened, not knowing what would happen. But then they decided, some of the slaves, they came out with the banjos and danced.
I'm gonna bring my steam drill out on this job, pop that steel on down.
My teacher was Professor Thomas Blakely, was, I can say, a real race man. He told us that someday that black people, a black man would be president of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Well done.
The slaves called North up South. In the 1920s, thousands of blacks was leaving the South, going north. 2 or 3 of my buddies got together and we decided the date we would be leaving. I got up in the morning, my mother fixed my breakfast. This was Saturday. I had put on my only suit under my white clothes. My mother looked at me and says, "You look awful fat." I turn it off. Oh, you always seeing things. And it's a very difficult moment in my life, leaving, knowing I wouldn't see her, and not to say goodbye. We was amazed at the automobiles, the traffic, the buses, the noise, all of the things, you know. We wanted water very badly, and this is the first time we ever drank out of the same fountain that white people drank. My first job in Chicago was at the stockyards. I was given a job. I didn't know what it was like. They said the freezer. So I was taken down on the elevator. We must have stopped some 10 stories below. We walked out into what I call the North Pole. Frank and I started getting close to each other, hoping we could warm up. I got a job on the railroad as a waiter. My trips would be Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Detroit. The job was miserable in a way. We never knew when we would be home. We never had a decent place to sleep. Had to depend on mostly tips. I was in Chicago, and it was organizer of the dining car workers in Chicago. It got to a point, even though the Wagner Act stated that a boss could not fire you for organizing, still they had ways of not giving me only a little work every now and then. It was in 1929. I was on my way to Chicago from Madison, Wisconsin. So the train stops and we get newspapers. And these newspapers is given out to the passengers. So as soon as the passengers start, we give them out, you know, the passengers start reading the new headlines. We saw cups falling from the table. We arrived in Chicago before we really got the full story of what happened, what was happening throughout the country. They were jumping out the windows in Wall Street and some of the other large cities, you know, like in California. In other words, the whole country was in a panic. I, too, shared in the depression. Plus, I lost my job. There was no more work. Looking at this statue here and the people marching remind me of Springfield, March 1932. People from Chicago organized a march on Springfield for home relief and Social Security. Social Security didn't exist in those days. The next morning, we had a fire bill, and the National Guards come up and threw all the clothes on the fire and burned them up. And then they attacked with tear gas. Around the yard was barbed wire fence. So many of the people got hurt by running into this barbed wire fence. And I remember so well the lick over the head I got by one of the National Guards. I realized for the first time the power of the state. So I couldn't live that way. I decided I would come to New York and maybe get a job here with the dining car department. I found that I was in Union Square Park the night I slept and was chased from the bench by the police. Union Square was very much like Washington Square Park in Chicago. Speakers were out in the numbers, all kinds of people speaking in different groups. the rise of fascism, Hitler and Mussolini, all of these things were being talked about. I was being educated about our own country and about the world. At the meantime, I met Alonzo and Herman. They invited me to have soup with them one day, you see, and coffee. And often I would come out there to meet them. Here I'm standing on 11th Street off of Broadway in front of the building that was my first home in New York. Herman and Alonzo invited me to come and live with them. I'm now on 125th Street in Harlem, in front of the Apollo Theater. The Apollo Theater, to me, looking back in the 1930s, was one of the great places to come. And I walked from out of the church and was on my way to Lenox Avenue, and I saw a large crowd standing here on this corner. And I asked the man what it was all about. He says to me, "Haven't you heard?" I told him no. He says to me that Mussolini have invaded Ethiopia, and thousands of people are now coming out in the streets in Harlem.
He had attacked far off Ethiopia.
So I had a problem of getting my
your birth?
passport.
Oh,
So
because of the birth certificate.
Alonzo left for Spain in 1936, the day after Christmas, with 96 men of all nationalities. Those were the first men to leave on their way to Spain. I was at the boat.
And you saw my father leave.
Very sad because
By this time, you two had become very close.
Close
and friends.
yes, and I was sad because I wasn't on the boat with him. We arrived in Paris and it was put up. We spent a week in Paris before we taken the train to South. We waited in the woods of pine groves until just about dark. And we taken the advantage of them who continue walking with their back to us to cross the mountain and into the woods. And we were on our way, on our walk all night across the Pyrenees Mountains. We all were very exhausted, and anything that we could throw away we would dump it, throw it away to make the loads less heavy. I remember I having a couple of books, a book by Gorky and another one by someone else, and the last one I kept was poems by Langston Hughes. I kept it until it even got heavy and I had to leave it on a rock, and we continued on until finally one of the guards yelled, "We, comrades, we are now in Spain." We arrived in Albacete sometime about noontime, and there were many refugees also arriving at the same time in Albacete. In Albacete, I first met a young man from Brooklyn named Walter Garland. Walter Garland was one that I knew back in New York. He was from Brooklyn, and one had already been at the front and was wounded. Then I asked him about Alonzo. He looked the other way for a while, and then he turned and he said he's no more with us. Well, I didn't quite understand what he meant by, I said, "What you mean by no more with us?" He said, "He's dead." Well, this was the most saddest shock to me, and the day was a day of sadness. I was a truck driver, like many of the other volunteers. Our experience in Spain was different from the soldiers that was in battle in the trenches. Although often we would be at the front, sometime being bombed from the air or artillery. And we often was far behind the lines, maybe picking up supplies, moving from one city to another. Most of them probably never saw Madrid, Barcelona, or Valencia, but for me, I was in all of these places and I was at the front. When I picked up these three men, I was surprised to know that they were Herbert Matthews of the New York Times and Ernest Hemingway that would be my passengers. So we made that trip to Turiel, and the purpose of their going was to see the results of the town Turiel after it had been taken by the International Brigade. After picture taken and of the town, we decided to leave for Valencia. He got into the truck and he sits side of me, and we introduced ourselves, and he says, "My name is Langston Hughes." And well, I almost fell over, you know, and we began to talk about how long he had been in Spain and how long I had been, and we arrived someplace along the way and stopped, and there where the Thelma Brigade was waiting to get their mail. I had put my blanket over Langston Hughes because it had turned very cold, you know, and I didn't want to take it from him, and I just said, give him the blanket to keep him warm because he needed it more than I did. The end, as far as driving a truck, being in the war directly came the morning that I awakened after a few hours sleep on the road. The drone of a plane overhead. I jumped up, I saw the plane, I saw him making a turn. 24 hours of my life was missing. The next time I remembered anything was I was in the hospital and a Polish doctor and a nurse were standing over me, and it was there that I stayed for a good 2 months or more. The doctor says that I would not be able to go to the front for a long time, and I would be more valuable back home. My thinking about I'm leaving Spain, something I didn't want to do. I would have loved to stay till the war ended. And then I thought about the people that I was leaving behind, especially those that had died and would remain in Spain forever. We arrived at the borders of France and Spain, and soon we crossed the border and taken a train to Paris.
I'm viewing the waters of New York City. I remember 50 years ago, I passed through these waters on my way back from Spain.
Well, my reception when I got home, thousands of people waited for the hour for us to get off the boat, newsmen, television, but I, with a few of us, they had to go to a hotel to stay that night. And I went to a little fleetback hotel on 34th Street and Broadway. And when it got to me, the clerk says, "I'm sorry, we don't have no room." So one of the guys said, "We thought you said you had rooms for us." "No, I don't have no room. This is the last one. They don't have no room for me." So, I knew what it was. I was back in America,
During the McCarthy time, I was hounded so much by the FBI. Every time I'd get a job in an electronic factory, I would be fired. Many times the FBI would come in the factory and wait till the boss paid me off. I was forced into self-employment. I finally opened a television repair shop in Greenwich Village. One day I had my head buried down in a television trying to solve the trouble. And I had a radio playing. The announcer said, the commentator said, the Clark County School Board of Mississippi, Quitman, Mississippi, have decided to desegregate the schools.
How about that was a tremendous victory. Yeah. I can imagine how you must have felt from your own.
This is Alonzo Watson. We lived together before we went to Spain. This is Von Love. We went to Spain on the same boat. This is Pat Roosevelt. Pat lost a leg in Spain, and we lived together on our return home.
Yates does represent a minority of African Americans who do believe, or did believe, that the Communist Party represented black interests more than any other organization. So someone like Yates, for example, despite his deep links to Mississippi, his connections to political movements, where did he end up living? I mean, living downtown. He ends up the head of NAACP in the Chelsea Greenwich Village area. He doesn't end up in the black churches or in the black organizations that we think are more typical.
Qué bueno verle. Tanto gusto verle. Siempre aquí en Madrid.
When I had come out of Mississippi, which was hell, and it wasn't much better in Chicago and New York, you know, and going to Spain where I could, if it ever got a chance, I could go into any hotel, I could eat in any place. Spain was the first time as a black man I felt a free man.
Picking cotton, 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 picking cotton before it rotten. A picking it low and a picking it high. I ain't gonna keep on picking this cotton till I die. And I'm picking this cotton for 40 years. My back keeps a hurting and no one cares. Gotta be picked, the boss is dry, but I ain't gonna keep on picking this cotton till I die. Sun is blazing on my back, got no time for giving me a snack. Sweat running down from my head in the fire, and I ain't gonna keep on picking this cotton till I die. Picking this cotton, well, I don't mind, but the boss keeps swinging that whip behind. Gonna tell you the truth, and it ain't no lie. I ain't gonna keep on picking this cotton till I die. Boss man holler out, hey old Joe, better speed up cause you're going too slow. Well, I got no wings and I sure can't fly, and I ain't gonna keep on picking this cotton till I die. One of these days, that won't be long, I'll be singing a different song. Gonna tell that boss it's cotton goodbye, cause I ain't gonna keep on picking this cotton till I die.